Okay, so we have to dispel this myth once and for all that Russia is being supposedly surrounded by NATO. So let's look at the fucking map, shall we? In blue, you have NATO countries. In red, you have the Soviet Federation, as I call it. Only right here, Estonia and Latvia, does NATO border Russia. And think of the size of Russia. How large it is. Now if you see here, Russia, well, since I'm in the United States, I'm going to go by miles. Russia's border all the way around is 35,910 miles. How many miles is the NATO border of Estonia and Latvia right here? How many miles is that? 350 miles. What percent is 350 of 35,910 miles? 0.97. Not even 1% of Russia's border is, confronted or touched by NATO. So let's look elsewhere. Let's say, for instance, Ukraine, we miraculously push out all the troops from eastern Ukraine and we somehow get them to join NATO. Let's see. Hold on. Remove pattern. And Georgia, because they are a NATO partnership, but they're also occupied. Like 30% of, like 1/3 of their country is occupied by Russia. So let's say we include them. They miraculously become NATO members one day. If we look at the Georgian border with Russia, where does it say? So Russia, with Georgia in its entirety, it would be 694 kilometers, but because of occupied South Ossetia and Abkhazia, it's only 365 kilometers. So the real border that Russia recognizes is 365 kilometers. 365 kilometers, if you add that to, where is it? Ukraine's 1,925 kilometers, you get, where is it? A total of 2,290 kilometers, or 0.8. 2,290.8 kilometers. In miles, that's 1,423. So with Ukraine and Georgia, if they become NATO members, including with Latvia and Estonia, their border with Russia, together they are 2,855.3 kilometers. So let's find out. Where is that? 2,855.3. 2,855.3 kilometers. That would be 1,774.2. 1774.2. 774.2. It's still less than 5% of Russia's border. If we were able to get Ukraine and Georgia, which we can't because they're occupied, we can really only be strategic partners with them, supply them weapons. If I was president of the United States, I'd get Georgia in easily. I would drive Russia out and put the fear of God in that son of a bitch Putin. But we can't, bring them in, so let's go ahead and, God, remove. So this is Russia's border realistically with NATO. Just Estonia and Latvia. Nowhere else does NATO touch. So, oh yeah, it's already over here in my history. So the real percentage of NATO on Russia's border is less than 1%. So when you hear this myth that NATO is surrounding Russia, tell them NATO is less than 1% on Russia's border. And, we can't forget how big Russia is. They say we block their access to the ocean. They have all of this up here, all the way around by Japan. So they have plenty of ocean access. Even here, Turkey does not blockade them in the Black Sea. They have access to the Baltic Sea right here. They are not blocked at all. And NATO doesn't get closer to Russia. People who get invaded, like Ukraine and Georgia, they get closer to NATO, just like the Baltics. They went in there in 1993, 1995, and 1999 and were killing radio towers, workers and radio station workers, occupying them while they were live on TV during the 90s when they were going through their bad time with the Soviet breakup. So why do you think they wanted to join NATO? It was their only assurance that they wouldn't get invaded by Russia. So, myth 1, NATO is all over Russia's border. False. It's less than 1% on Russia's border. Myth 2, NATO is surrounding Russia. That's, just by the less than 1% answer, that's not true. But they're only really in Europe, where their allyship is. That's it. They're not trying to get into Kazakhstan or China, Mongolia, North Korea. NATO isn't trying to incorporate Japan. They're not trying to get Azerbaijan to join. This is nonsense. And then myth number 3, NATO is growing closer and closer to Russia. Wrong. Eastern Europe is growing closer and closer to NATO. NATO doesn't try to expand. It accepts people based on their own requests, that they request by their own freedom, and they are accepted accordingly when they meet standards.